Akhenaten's purpose was, first of all, it was just to be, just to show you what you're going to become. And then the second of all, he started a school, and the school was called the Egyptian Mystery School of Akhenaten, the Law of One. And the school was a school of immortality, of resurrection, and it was only functionable for 17 and a half years before they had him drink this thing. So he only had 17 and a half years to complete something that he had to do, and he did complete what he needed to do. The next phase of this is that they needed to not just bring an actual form of what we're going to become, but that they needed to bring someone out onto the surface who was half and half. And I'll explain that in just a moment. Part of us and part of the next level. And so to do that, they had to get a very special group together. And that's what the purpose of the Egyptian Mystery School was. And so they began this training. They selected from the people of that were the followers of Akhenaten, that believed in him, people who had done the 12 years of training of the left eye of Horus. The left eye of Horus is the feminine, which is controlled by the right brain, is the female psychic side of things. And so the temples that run, starting in Abu Simbel, that run all the way up there, which are equivalent to the chakra centers in the spine, each one has a different aspect of a school, and I'll talk about this more in a little bit too. And they were there to teach about all the emotional and psychic aspects of the right eye or the left eye of Horus. And so they taught about tantra and sexual energy and emotional body work and fears and all these kinds of things. When someone had been through all of that training after 12 years, and they were at least 45 years old, then they were eligible to go to the right eye of Horus, which is through the Egyptian Mystery School that I just mentioned. And out of this, they had a few hundred people that were selected and went through the school. It took 12 years to give the right eye of Horus. The right eye of Horus had never been given before. So on what's written on all of the walls is the left eye, and the missing information, the other half of the information, the male part of the information, was only written in one place in Egypt. And they don't know where that is, because it's down underneath. It's leading way underneath the pyramids. And so that information was never given to them. They never had the full set of what was necessary. And so it was finally given in this school. At the end of 12 years, they then could begin to process the people through an initiation in the Great Pyramid, which I'll describe exactly what they did. And so it means that they only had 5.5 years to reap the benefits of all this work that they've been doing for all this length of time. And this guy must have been the world's greatest teacher, because in 5.5 years they got almost 300 people to realize immortality. He did 300 people in 17 and a half years, which is incredible. But of course, if you got a 14.5-foot person sitting there, I guess you'll listen to them and probably really believe what he has to say. But anyway, he was very successful. They were almost all women, almost totally women, and this group then went back underneath with the Todd Brotherhood and remained there. And then in 500 BC, this group as a whole got up, left the Great Pyramids, and migrated over to a place called Masada, Israel. And they became known as the Essene Brotherhood. The Essene Brotherhood, the core of the Essene Brotherhood were these 300 primarily women who were really Egyptians and were immortal beings, had already obtained immortality. And they then created another school around them, another mystery school around them, which contained both males and females, which were the outer aspect of the school, which were ordinary people trying to understand immortality. And Mary was one of these people. Now, if you're Christian, you can just accept this or not, or whatever you want, but this is, I got to say it because this is what I believe. Mary was one of the inner core. She was an immortal being before Jesus was ever born. And she was Egyptian, and she was part of the Egyptian school. A statement in the Bible that could be interpreted many ways, but when God was talking about his son, he would say, what did he say in there? He says, "Out of Egypt will come my son." And many have said, well, that was the time when he went back to Egypt, because Jesus lived in Egypt for a long time. And they said, well, that's what they meant by that. But it could have been interpreted in another way also. But anyway, according to Thoth, Mary was an Egyptian. She was a mortal being. She came from this original school, and she was in the scene. And that Joseph was also in the scene, but he was not an immortal being, and he was from the outer ring. And they crossed the two rings. They crossed the immortal being they crossed immortality with mortality, and it opened the way for a very special spirit to come here, who has a name that I don't want to say, a very beautiful name from somewhere else, and he was one of the most advanced souls that this universe has ever created, and who came from a level of existence totally beyond our imagination at this point, and came down to this extremely low level of life to live a life, who we call Jesus. And it was the cross between Mary and Joseph, between the immortal and the immortal. And so he started out as the Son of Man and became the Son of God. He started out as a mortal person and transmutated into an immortal person and gave the example out to the world. And if you really start looking at things like baptism and all the principles of resurrection and everything, you'll find that these didn't start in Christianity, but all had their roots in Egypt. And even some of them, baptism even further back than that. So, again, you don't have to accept that, but I have to say it. And so now we had a person who was teaching resurrection, the same basic principles of Egypt from the very beginning, only who, again, you can't just talk about it, you've got to do it. And so you've got to actually live it or present everything. It's like a lot of people, and I don't mean to put them down in this way, but a lot of people who teach sacred geometry and what this is about, you get reams and reams and reams of showing it, but then giving no way to bring it in to make it real, no way to ground it into the experience. You got to have that. Without that, knowledge is completely useless. It has no purpose or meaning. And so that's what they were doing, is they were having someone live it and go through the whole process. And so now Jesus gave the final example of what the next step of all this was all about. And so I'm going to leave that there at this point. And we'll ask questions, and we'll just do this for a little bit. I'd like you to ask. Last time what happened was there was only a few people asked questions, and a lot of people who didn't get to ask questions, so you get one question, I'm sorry, and then you must give it to someone else. So, who's got that? Who's behind me?
We thought to start at the back this time because I didn't know.
Okay, hand it in the back. Those guys never get it. Yeah, those guys in the back know everything.
We're in the front, yes.
got a whole another level of consciousness and awareness and information in China and Tibet and all over in there. There's pyramids over there. My sister, who's been all over China, my sister is real famous in China, and they allow her to go anywhere, just about. I don't even know if this is just about. They allow her to go anywhere she wants. And she said that she's been taken to places. She's been to Egypt 22 times. And she said that she's been taken to places in China that make Egypt look like nothing. And yet the rest of the world doesn't even know it's there. It's totally secret. And they've got pyramids all over the place, and they completely deny it, that they're even there. They won't, even if you try to say them. And there's some of them that we finally got photographs of and everything else like that, and they'll say, okay, all right, that one's there. You know, one of the most beautiful pyramids in the world is between the Chinese-Tibetan border. It's the largest pyramid that we know of in the world. It's a solid white capstone. It looks like it was made yesterday from the people that I've had an eyewitness of this. And it's got big, solid white sides with a solid crystal capstone on top of it, going to a sharp point. It's in perfect condition. And there's the doorway into it is open, and you go into this thing, and you go through this thing into this final room, into the middle of this big room. There's no words anywhere. There's no writing. There's no pictures. There's no nothing, except for one. And when you go into the middle, up high in the front wall, this is from an eyewitness that was in it, there's only one thing, and that's the flower of life. It says it all. If you know what the flower of life is, you just said everything that you could possibly say in this least amount of words. And that one, and say the Tibetan government completely, even though people have been there and photographed it and everything else like that. If you call them, and we try to get the precise location and everything. We went 6 months with them trying to get it. And then we finally got, and I talked to one group. It takes 6 months to get to this thing. You've got to really prepare, because you're going through uncharted, unmapped country, and you're going to have food and everything. And when you get there, you've got to get back. So you got to really time it. The second group that I talked to that got there, they got right to the rim of the valley. They could see it sitting down in the valley, but they had to turn back, because if they went in, they would all die, because they wouldn't have enough food to get back. We're talking about really high and cold, so there's no food, there's no way of getting back. And it's only out of the snow. It's buried under the snow. It's only out of the snow for 3 weeks out of the year. And it's hard to see, because you got a white pyramid in snow. So, but these are the kinds of things that do exist out there, and there's really a lot going on over there. But the Chinese have really, really, really tried to protect it, and I'm glad they have. I'm glad they do. The Tibetans, the Egyptians do the same thing. They, from what we know about in Egypt, you could about triple that on what's hidden. And the Egyptian government knows a great deal of where this stuff is, but they're not going to tell you. They're not going to open it up. They wouldn't do it unless they were forced to somehow. They don't see any reason to bring that out purposely. What's real interesting after that, who would you think they would trust, of course, to make the transition between that dynasty and the next one? Is they made I and Taye king and queen, because they were the only ones that tested it. So they were king and queen during the transition, and then when Seth came in the 19th dynasty, then I turned it over to him, because he didn't really want to be king, but they had to make that transition over to and then when Seth came in, he immediately turned it back into exactly what it was before. They erased everything and started right back over. And Akhenaten was then called something exactly what Jesus was called. He was given the name the criminal, worst king that ever lived. But Nefertiti and none of the sisters and daughters, and all of them, were ever found, not anything. However, about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, they found 2 things in Tel El-Armana, which was very heartening for me. First one was they found some more burial caskets, and they opened one of them up, and inside, right over the top of the head, where the person was looking up, was the flower of life. I had not been able to tie that to the 18th dynasty before, and so I was glad to see that one. But then they found another casket, which they don't know what to do. It is sitting in the basement of the Cairo Museum right now. But they found this big casket, and they opened it up, and there was the bones of a 7-year-old boy who was 8 feet tall. 7 years old, 8 feet tall. And they don't know what to think about that, but it's physically sitting in Egypt right now. They don't know about the skull. I got this through one of the Egyptologists out of Egypt, and so I didn't get to see this with my eyes. Yeah. Well, wait a minute. I can't. Gotta have the stick. Who's got the next question? Do you have it? Who's the next question? She asked the next question here. And then you're next after this one.
What was the difference between Akhenaten putting something into the Akashic records and the pattern that Christ put into it?
Well, Akhenaten was showing that which we would become physically. We're actually going to go through metamorphosis of that. Jesus was showing the pathway out from where we are here to there. So that they were working together. The two patterns were both necessary. You understand? It's got to go back to her.
When you were talking about Jesus, you said, at least I think you were talking about it, you said, I don't want to say his name. And I just wondered what you're referring to, if you can tell us a little bit about that. And also, as far as Jesus being a culmination of Joseph and Mary, a mortal and an immortal, it's always viewed that they never conceived in the normal way.
That's right.
But yet for it to be a culmination of the both, it is from both sides of the equation, so to speak.
Yeah, I'll explain that in just a little bit. We're going to talk about immortality, and I'll explain what they did and how that took place. But what was the first part of the question? Oh, Jesus' name. Well, his name, Jesus, is an earth name. He has another name that's much more ancient, and I don't know if I have the right to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. No, that's all the names that you're going to know of are all earth names, and I don't have the. A lot of people have other names that come from other places, and they may or may not want that discussed, and I just feel to not talk about that. Okay, we got one more question here that she asked here. We're going to have.
Have you any information on why Osiris was depicted having a green face and then Akhenaten had a blue face?
Akhenaten had a blue face?
When he met Mut.
I think you mean that on the... I don't know. I don't think that Akhenaten in reality had a blue face. Though Osiris was always depicted as having either a green or a light blue face. And I think that's because he was dead when they got him. And they were resurrecting him literally out of the dead. As a dead person. I think that's what it is. He's sometimes depicted with white also, as having a white face. White body.